Give it up for Bill Hartung, everybody.
You look strangely familiar. I have to take care of some business before I get started. Did you bring my name tag, Seth? It's wonderful to perform in front of friends and colleagues, but also terrible because if it's a room of strangers and you bomb, you feel the pain for one night. You bomb in front of friends, you hear it for the rest of your life. So I'll try to up my game. I was going to do crowd work, but since I know everybody, I know the answers. So I'm peculiar in the world of comedy for many reasons, but one is I'm a foreign policy expert by day and a stand-up comic by night. And I often confuse the two. I was giving a speech to a group of UN diplomats about the future of the nuclear non-proliferation regime. They started laughing hysterically. And then I came to the club that night and I was starting my routine. People were taking notes. And then they started yelling out clarifying questions like, what is a think tank? And should we really be arming Ukraine? And then there's this guy in the back. Every once in a while he says, I agree with that remark. So basically nobody's laughing. And so I do what every good comic does when they're bombing. I start attacking the audience. People should have tried that earlier, I think. So I say, what the fuck is wrong with you people? And surprisingly enough, it doesn't work. So I rush through into my routine and I try to sneak out the back door. There's a guy waiting there and he says, do I have a footnoted version of my routine? What kind of idiot would do that, right? I mean, I did have one, but I wasn't going to give it to him. So needless to say, if I'm at a party and it's a choice of talking about nuclear non-proliferation or doing comedy, people tend to go towards comedy, When I say non-proliferation, they go look for a drink and don't come back. But anyway, so they're like, well, how did you get into comedy? And it was kind of backwards. I was a speechwriter for an elected official who was humor impaired. And every time I put a joke in his speech, he didn't get it. We'd have to have an emergency executive committee meeting to explain the joke to him. And then the committee would ruin the joke, and I'd have to take it back. And all my best stuff was on the cutting room floor. So I got a job at the New School, and there was free classes, and there was a stand-up comedy workshop. So I jumped on it, and you had to bring material the first night. So I brought jokes about Richard Nixon's sex life, which I happened to find hilarious, but others did not agree. So the teacher said, Bill, you're supposed to do stuff about things you know about. Like, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I work at a think tank, and my specialty is international arms control. So I figured that would go over like a lead balloon, but this was the New School, which was still a little quirky then. So they were like, we would love to hear a comedy routine about international arms control. And so my first reaction was, are you people completely insane? And my second reaction was, oh, fuck, what am I going to do now, right? So I tried it out. I had some, like, middling nuclear weapons jokes. Like, I did an impersonation of an ICBM. When you just go, like, sort of like that. And when I was younger and I could jump, it killed, But every once in a while, reality gives you something to work with. Like Donald Trump, whose name I hate to actually use, had a pissing match with Kim Jong-un from North Korea. And he said, my nuclear button's bigger than your nuclear button, which is kind of irrelevant once you launch it. I mean, hey, what size button did you push? But anyway, it got worse because Trump, he called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man, like the Elton John song. I'm a rocket man, burning up this fuse up here alone. And the problem is, in addition to my singing voice, Kim Jong-un hates Elton John. And it looked like we were going to be on the brink of World War III, but he de-escalated. He answered with a Taylor Swift lyric, and they had an amicable breakup. And also, Kim Jong-un did a song that hit the top of the charts in North Korea. Of course, he controls the charts. So, so the other thing is the name of the think tank I work at. Well, my day job is creating world peace, and I'm kind of fucking up, frankly. But anyway, I work at this thing called the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. We were going to go for a longer, more pompous name, but we couldn't figure it out. It's something to do with John Quincy Adams, something he said 200 years ago. Nobody cares, but there's problems. Like I was at a party and I told this guy, I work at the Quincy Institute. He says, wow, there's a think tank named after Quincy Jones. And so I went back to the office and I said, how about the Quincy Jones Institute for Responsible Statecraft? And they weren't having it. So most people don't even know what a think tank is, and I'm kind of keep it that way. But because it's pretty cushy. But anyway, one thing I'm sure of, no thinking goes on there. That's really not the point. The point is you got to sound like you know what you're talking about. So like I was on CNN once, and they were like, Mr. Hartung, what's next for Ukraine? And I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck should I know? I mean, do I look like a foreign policy expert? And then I was like, oh, God, I am supposed to be a foreign policy expert. So I said, well, Wolf, first of all, I'm so glad you asked me that question. And I think what's going to happen is, either they're going to hunker down for a long war, or they're going to go straight to the negotiating table, and only time will tell. And, only time will tell. What kind of bullshit answer is that? But actually, it was above average for a CNN pundit. They keep asking me back. But I would say my biggest problem on TV is I don't really look like an expert. There's this thing called the resting face. What you look like when you're on screen, you're not saying anything. And my resting face look like I'm about to fall asleep. So they'll say, we're joined by William Hartung. And I'll be like... So I'm going to fix that. I'm using gestures now. So I went on the same show, and they said, we're joined by William Hartung. I went... which is not attractive, but I wasn't asleep, so it's an improvement. And then they put me on a split screen. I was debating this guy. He started talking, and I went... And then he said something silly, so I just went... And then he was completely over the top, and I did that. And, I did that on Fox News once, and I was banned for life. Because you've probably noticed they have, incredibly high standards over there. So, I'm thinking it's possible that I should get a new job before I get fired for incompetence. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll be a hedge fund manager. Except I don't actually know what that is. Then I was like, well, what's another lucrative field? Preferably a cash business. Maybe it'd be a dominatrix. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, but I understand there's a shortage. So, and then I found a job I could actually do, which is the Pentagon needs people to help them name wars, and I could do that. I have an amazing name for a war. It's called Operation Excuse Me, and Russia's about to invade another country. God damn it! And so you send a bunch of pushy New Yorkers over there, and when the troops come to the border, my neighbor Blanche goes up to them and says, "Excuse me, we got here first." And I can tell you from personal experience, you do not want to fuck with Blanche. So the troops turn around and go home. Thank you.
We're going for Bill Hartung, everybody. Okay. God, we're down to our final comic of the show. How exciting is that? This is exciting. Guys, we have one more comic for you. He's co-authored a book called